I'll be honest, I was genuinely shocked watching this segment from CNN. Not because AI isn't disruptive, but because of how loosely the data was handled. CNN frames this as if AI is already eliminating huge numbers of jobs, and that universal basic income may now be urgently required. Before we go any further, listen to how they present it.
It's causing job loss right now, and the headlines, they tell the story. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, on Wednesday released a study that found that artificial intelligence can already replace 11.7% of the U.S. labor market.
This sounds dramatic, but what you just heard is not actually a prediction of job loss. It's a measurement of task exposure. MIT isn't saying 11.7% of jobs are gone. They're saying that roughly 11.7% of wages sit in occupations that could be automated if companies redesigned everything around AI. Those are very different statements, and they tell a very different story.
Amazon is on the cusp of replacing what would be 600,000 warehouse jobs with robots and plans to automate 75% of its operations.
This sounds like 600,000 people being replaced, but that is not what's happening. This is a long-term automation roadmap, and most of the reduction comes from not hiring future workers, not firing existing ones. Amazon automates tasks, not people, and in every automation cycle so far, they've grown their total workforce, not shrunk it.
Goldman Sachs estimating that 6 to 7% of the U.S. workforce could be displaced due to AI adoption. They do note, however, that the impact may only be transitory.
This is the part everyone forgets. Goldman Sachs is not predicting mass unemployment. Their model shows a temporary displacement of around 6 to 7% of workers during the adjustment period, and a very modest increase in unemployment, roughly half a percentage point before the economy reabsorbs people into new roles. The key word here is temporary. AI increases productivity, and in every major technological shift, productivity eventually creates new demand, new companies, and new jobs. This is why the real story is not job destruction, it's job churn. But CNN doesn't stop there. They jump straight to one of the biggest numbers in the entire conversation. The McKinsey estimate that sounds like 40% of American jobs could disappear. Let's hear how they frame that.
By the McKinsey Global Institute, finding that AI could displace 40% of American jobs due to automation by 2030. That analysis found that robots and AI agents could automate more than half of U.S. work hours, both manual and cognitive, using technology that's available today.
This is where the discussion completely loses context. McKinsey is not saying 40% of American jobs will vanish. They're measuring the share of tasks in certain occupations that are technically automatable, not the number of people who will be unemployed. Every job is a bundle of tasks. Even in the most exposed roles, a large part of the work simply cannot be automated. Which is why the ILO, the OECD, and PwC all find the same pattern. High exposure doesn't mean job elimination, it means job transformation. And then CNN presents one of the most misleading numbers in the entire debate, the claim that the World Economic Forum expects 92 million jobs to be displaced. Here's how they put it.
The World Economic Forum projecting that 92 million jobs worldwide may be displaced by 2030.
This number is true, but completely incomplete. The WEF does estimate 92 million roles displaced by automation, but it simultaneously projects 170 million roles created, a net positive of 78 million. The future of work isn't disappearing, it's rearranging itself. Tasks flow to where technology is strongest and new roles rise around them. But the news rarely shows the full picture. And then the segment shifts from data to prediction, and this is where things really go off track. Listen to how Andrew Yang describes the impact of AI on truck drivers.
Need is self-driving cars to destabilize society. In a few years, we're going to have 1 million truck drivers out of work.
For context, Andrew Yang ran for president in 2020 as a Democrat and later founded his own political movement called the Forward Party. He's been one of the most vocal public figures, warning about automation-driven job loss and advocating for universal basic income. But this prediction was made 7 years ago, and none of it happened. Today, the United States still employs more than 3 million truck drivers. Employment hasn't collapsed, wages haven't collapsed, and autonomous trucking is still in small pilot programs, not nationwide deployment, and this illustrates something crucial. Technological capability moves fast, but organizations infrastructure, and regulation move slowly. That gap between invention and real-world adoption, what I call the implementation gap, is widening every year as innovation accelerates. It's the implementation gap, not AI itself, that breaks most dramatic predictions. And this brings us to the final part of the CNN segment. The argument that universal basic income is now necessary because millions of people will be out of work.
Back in 2020, it was presidential candidate Andrew Yang who called his version of universal basic income the freedom dividend, specifically $1,000 per month, no work requirements, no means testing, a direct payment to help people cover bills, weather economic transitions, and adapt to a job market reshaped by technology.
His small UBI pilots absolutely improve people's well-being. No question about that. But they tell us nothing about whether a national universal basic income is economically feasible. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not ruling out that AI and robotics could bring sweeping change over the next decade. That is possible. But the way CNN uses these reports to justify a UBI simply doesn't make sense, because they misrepresent what the numbers actually say. A universal basic income only becomes necessary when a very large share of the population can no longer provide economic value and therefore can no longer earn a salary. That's the scenario where you need UBI, where the majority of people are structurally outside the economy. Until we reach that point, what we need is what we've always needed: a strong welfare system that supports the people who genuinely can't provide value and earn income. And here's the key point. None of the reports CNN cites, not MIT, not McKinsey, not Goldman Sachs, not the World Economic Forum, forecast anything even close to mass structural unemployment in the next 10 years. Not one of them. So the idea that UBI is urgently required because AI is about to remove most people from the workforce, that conclusion simply isn't supported by the data. And after discussing job loss, the conversation shifts to something else. If mass unemployment really is coming, who should pay for the solution? Andrew Yang argues that the answer is simple: just tax the AI companies. Here's how he puts it.
The CEO of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, just raised his hand and said, you guys should tax us, the AI firms. And right now, hundreds of billions of dollars of value is being realized by Anthropic and these other firms on the back, by the way, of data that we all provided unwittingly and didn't agree to it. But it's trillions of dollars of value.
This idea sounds intuitive, but the numbers make it completely impossible, at least for the next decade. So let's take a data-driven look. A meaningful universal basic income in the United States would need to be at least $2,000 per adult per month. That's $24,000 per year. With roughly 330 million Americans, the annual cost would be in the range of $7 to $8 trillion a year. Now compare that to the combined annual profits of the biggest US tech companies: Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, Tesla, and others. Together, they generate profits in the low hundreds of billions per year, not trillions, hundreds of billions. Even if you seized 100% of their profits, every dollar, you wouldn't come close to funding a national UBI. You wouldn't even get 10% of the way there. And that's before you consider that these profits don't even come from AI. Most AI companies today are still heavily loss-making because the infrastructure costs are enormous and the business models are still emerging. And there's a second problem. If the United States suddenly imposed punitive taxes specifically on AI companies, investment would collapse overnight. Money only flows into AI because investors believe long-term returns will be positive. Remove that incentive and you stall the entire industry. And strategically, that would be disastrous. The United States and China are in a head-to-head race for AI leadership, a race with economic and national security implications. If the US kneecaps its own AI sector with extreme taxation, it's not the wealthy who win, it's China. You would effectively be handing them the lead. So when you put real numbers on the table, it becomes clear. Tech profits cannot fund a meaningful UBI. Not today, not in 5 years, and not in 10 years. The math simply doesn't work, and no serious strategy for national competitiveness would ever propose it. So what's really happening here? Because the logic in this segment simply doesn't add up. CNN and Andrew Yang cite reports from MIT, McKinsey, Goldman, and the World Economic Forum, reports that all say we are not heading for mass unemployment in the next 10 years. And then they use those same reports to argue for a nationwide UBI. That's not analysis, it's narrative. And let me be clear, I'm not denying the scale of change coming. We are entering the turbulent decade where AI and robotics will reshape industries faster than organizations can adapt. But that's not a collapse story, it's a transformation story. The real challenge is the implementation gap. Technology races ahead, while companies, regulations, and skills lag behind. That gap creates friction and inequality, but it does not eliminate most jobs. And that's why the UBI framing makes no sense. UBI is a solution for a world where the majority of people can no longer create economic value. We are nowhere near that. Not according to any of the reports CNN cites, not according to any of the data we have. If someone wants to claim AI will accelerate so fast that every forecast is wrong, fine. Make that argument directly. But don't pretend the data supports a conclusion that it clearly doesn't. We do need new policies for the turbulent decade. But UBI is far too massive, too blunt, and too disconnected from the reality of what the next 10 years will actually look like. AI will reshape work, but the story is evolution, not extinction. If this raised questions for you, my video Forget UBI goes deeper into what's coming next. Don't miss it.